This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on the latest developments in Afghanistan and India's evacuation efforts. The participants are Veena Sikri, former ambassador, and Aditi Tandon, journalist.
Deadly blasts, including one by a suicide bomber, have killed 85 people in Kabul yesterday, including 13 US soldiers outside the gate of the Hamid Karzai airport in the war-torn country. So as we saw and as we also witnessed the events of the past week, the world was watching with a bated breath as to how will the Taliban control Afghanistan after recapturing Kabul after nearly 20 years. Now, Ms. Sikri, we have seen that there has been a bloody start to the Taliban regime. Although they had promised a while ago that they will not allow the soil of Afghanistan to be used for terrorist activities, but it pretty much seems like what was the worst is actually coming true. And the world was fearing this, wasn't it?
Yes, indeed. There's been a terrible, terrible incident yesterday. Truly tragic for all the people who lost their lives. And I think it reflects two or three different factors. First of all, as you have correctly noted, the Taliban's promises do not seem to be worth the paper they are written on, because they promised that their territory will not be used for any kind of terrorist attack. But then we see that this terrorist attack has happened. And I think that we cannot give the Taliban any deniability in this. A, they do have the governance of the country. B, I think the point is that we have to see all the factors involved. It is traditionally said that, but you see the Taliban and the ISIS, the Islamic State of the Khorasan province, they do not see eye to eye, they're enemies and so on. But we know that with the Taliban taking over, all the terrorist groups from different parts of the world seem to be flocking to Afghanistan. And this is a terrible situation. Secondly, we do know that the authority in Kabul, the responsibility for the security of Kabul, had been given to the Haqqani network. And the Haqqani network is actually very close to the ISIS-K, to the Islamic State of Khorasan province. So here we see that since it is the Taliban and the Haqqani network who agreed on saying that yes, Kabul security will be with the Haqqani network, and under Haqqani network's watch, this terrible blast has happened. So the deniability cannot be there for the Taliban. In fact, the responsibility has to be shared by both the Taliban and the Haqqani network. So far, only the ISIS-K has claimed responsibility and everybody else is trying to deny. So I think this is reflective of the very fragile situation in Afghanistan. The fact that there is no government at all. There is no government has been formed. So that with no government, there seems to be no governance as well. So it seems to be completely chaotic. And it is tragic to see that tens of thousands of people from Afghanistan are rushing to the airport because they want to leave the country. And we do know that we have seen that all nationalities are trying to help. The Americans are trying to withdraw the people from Afghanistan. But of course, the events of yesterday, the terrible, violent terrorist blast, have created a problem and have interrupted it. Nonetheless, President Biden has said that he will continue with the evacuations and he will complete it by August 31st. So this is creating a lot of uncertainty in the minds of the Afghan people, because these tens of thousands who are at the airport have been depending on the USA, the UK and other NATO powers to evacuate them from Afghanistan. But it seems that before August 31st, a lot of this evacuation will remain incomplete. This is a terrible problem for the people of Afghanistan.
And a section of the US officials and also some UK top functionaries have also mentioned today that as the American and British troops leave Afghanistan, there will be a mad rush among these terror networks to actually stake claim to who really was responsible for ousting the Western powers from Afghanistan. So that's also one power play which is going on. But I'd like to bring you back to the recent meeting of the United Nations Security Council. And isn't it very telling, Ms. Sikri, that External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar very correctly pointed out at the UNSC meeting that day recently that proscribed groups like the Haqqani Network and Pakistan-backed terror groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed continue to operate with impunity and encouragement from Pakistan on the Afghanistan soil. And we also have a history with Haqqani Network in the sense that it has links with the Al-Qaeda, and it did run terrorist training camps, including in Kashmir, earlier in the 1990s. How do you look at that scenario for the national security of India?
I think the Indian government is certainly very, very worried about the situation because the volatility of the situation, the fragility of the situation in Afghanistan is very worrying for India and for all other countries in the world, but particularly for India. As you know, India has been deeply committed to the people of Afghanistan, and our External Affairs Minister has repeatedly said that our commitment is to the people of Afghanistan, and this commitment will continue. And we do know that the people of Afghanistan are looking to India to help them out in the situation. And India right now is a non-permanent member of the Security Council till the end of 2022. And this month of August, India is also holding the rotating presidency of the Security Council. Under India's chairmanship of the Security Council, 2 discussions have been held on Afghanistan, one on the 6th of August and the other on the 16th of August, which was the day after the Taliban overran the country. And in each of these, our External Affairs Minister, our permanent representative, and all others involved have made it very, very clear about the dangers involved, the lack of democracy, the lack of religious freedom, the complete sway of terrorist groups in Afghanistan. The Haqqani Network certainly has a very big role to play, and the Haqqani Network is fully committed to the government of Pakistan. The ISISK is present in the eastern districts of Afghanistan, very close to the Pakistan border, and has been involved with the Haqqani Network in these drug smuggling routes, in the human trafficking routes between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So I think that the dangers to the people of Afghanistan and the dangers to all terrorist groups, as our External Affairs Minister has so correctly mentioned, are very real. India has taken a leadership role in highlighting these concerns in the World Forum, in the United Nations, in the Security Council. And I sincerely hope that this will be reflected. I hope there is a resolution in the Security Council on the subject. We also saw that the Human Rights Council Chief, Michelle Bachelet, spoke about the violence, the threat to women, the threat to civil liberties in Afghanistan that is already being seen in the past 10 days or so after the Taliban overran the country. So I think all the organizations, all the concerned people need to get together.
Yesterday at an important meeting of all parties where External Affairs Minister Mr. Jaishankar gave a detailed briefing on India's measures taken in Afghanistan. Around 525 people have been evacuated, including some of the nationals of other countries as well, and Hindu and Sikh minorities who are Afghans have also been evacuated. But bringing you back to what the government yesterday did admit in the all-party meeting, that the big challenge is actually the full and safe evacuation of all Indian nationals from Afghanistan. And there was also an admission that some of the people are left behind. So, Ms. Sikri, at a time when the Western powers are also actually scrambling to escape and also evacuate their own people, with around 1,000 US citizens also left behind, how do you see the challenge for India in terms of safe evacuation, considering the embassy staff is also back in India?
It is a very challenging situation, and I think the government of India has been very successful so far, not only in completing this evacuation, but actually even to complete the evacuation of people, it requires a huge amount of coordination. The Taliban people, with the US authorities there, the Marines and so on, and with a lot of logistics to be looked at to get the people who want to leave the country, the Indian nationals and others, to the airport. Once they get to the airport, to get them inside the airport, to have the documents checked. It is a huge logistics exercise, and I'm very glad that the government of India held this all-party meeting yesterday. And after listening to the briefing by External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, it is quite remarkable that all the opposition members, so there was an all-party consensus on this. There was great appreciation for the efforts being made by the government of India, the success of the efforts being made by the government of India, and full support for the continuation of these efforts. The continuation will be very difficult, as we know that even as the blast took place yesterday, there were another group of people who had come to the airport and had managed to leave just before the blast took place. And now the next objective is to see when the window of opportunity will arise for this group to come back to the airport and then to be evacuated to India. So it is an ongoing effort. It is very tough. One cannot at all minimize the difficulties. I think one has to recognize the difficulties involved. But I think India will continue its contact with all players involved in this. And I hope that we will be met with success.
And we also heard the US President say today that we will not forgive, we will not forget, we'll hunt you down and make you pay. Do you see any change of strategy on the part of the Western powers, especially the US, which is committed to leaving Afghanistan by August 31? Do you see any change after yesterday's attack?
Right now, it is very clear till August 31st, nothing will change. I think President Biden has made that quite clear that till August 31st, nothing will change. So they are determined to do whatever evacuations are possible by August 31st and then to leave Afghanistan. Now, what happens after that? This is the critical question. And I think that as suggested by Michelle Bachelet of the UN Human Rights Council, when she spoke 2-3 days ago, I think we have to see the international responsibility for this. So whether we look at the United Nations, the United Nations Security Council, we have to see some organization which will have a monitoring role in Afghanistan, which will make sure that after the international powers, the Americans and the NATO powers leave, that there will not be a vacuum and that there will not be chaos and not be more and more of these kind of attacks. We already know, and this is a very important point I think we need to focus on, that so far the Taliban has not won the trust of the people of Afghanistan. The people of Afghanistan are resisting. We do know what's happening in Panjshir Valley. We do know that the Tajiks, 27% of the population, are very worried about what is going on. The Uzbeks and the Hazaras are equally worried. And the Pashtun population, which is 42% of the population, they do not all support the Taliban. Maybe less than half support the Taliban. Far less than half, maybe even just 20-25%. And Taliban, if they are to have any kind of governance, they have to win the trust of everybody. So in the Security Council debate, there was reference to an inclusive government. Very, very important. Inclusive government reflecting all segments of the population, all groups and religious minorities and ethnic minorities who will be able to participate in the governance of Afghanistan so that the trust will be there and everybody will be committed to good governance. This had not happened so far. There has been no outcome on that.
So far, Ms. Sikri, all we've actually heard the US President say that they will exercise financial tools to wield influence over Afghanistan. We know that the International Monetary Fund has also frozen its aid to Afghanistan, and these financial tools are being actually used right now. And India, as you know, has said already very clearly that it drawing comparisons with COVID-19, and India has said at the UNSC that no one is safe till everybody is safe, which is actually a phrase which is quite relevant in context of Afghanistan. How does the world hold Afghanistan accountable on its promise that its soil will not be used to perpetrate terror across the world and specifically in the neighborhood?
As you said rightly, the IMF and World Bank have withheld all monies. But my feedback from Afghanistan, and especially the women of Afghanistan, is that they are worried because if there's no money in Afghanistan, already prices are going up. Already the value of the dollar has skyrocketed so that the value of the Afghan currency has fallen drastically. So the people of Afghanistan are suffering already. And so there has to be a balance as to how do we make sure that the people of Afghanistan, their suffering is minimized, but that governance is ensured. I do not think the Taliban has shown that sense of ability or tolerance to be able to get all the people of Afghanistan on board. So I think that while initial steps to withhold the financial flows, we have seen other measures. I can tell you, for example, one thing that, there was an announcement that all trade between India and Afghanistan has stopped. There was even some air trade, but that has stopped. And of course, the land is completely stopped. We have no trade now with Afghanistan. But there was also news that the trade from Afghanistan to Pakistan has gone up hugely. So obviously what is happening is Pakistan is keeping the borders open for anything that Afghanistan wants to sell, and they're taking it into Pakistan, and they will then export it from Pakistan as Pakistani goods, either take the money for themselves or say that it's a Pakistani export. And again, the benefit of that will not go back to the people of Afghanistan. So actually, the bottom line is that the people of Afghanistan are suffering enormously. And here again, it is the responsibility of the US government, who was there for 20 years, the NATO powers, the United Nations Security Council, and the people of the world all over. And India is fully prepared to play its responsible role in this. It is the collective responsibility to ensure that there is good governance in Afghanistan, there is no terrorism on Afghanistan soil.
You say the onus of proving that they will live up to their word is actually on the Taliban, and we'll wait and see what happens next. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
You are listening to a discussion on the latest developments in Afghanistan and India's evacuation efforts. The participants were Veena Sikri, former ambassador, and Aditi Tandon, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio.